green light so we can go racing. And he's looking for a good start here.
I'm excited for this as they go across the line. Junior with a big gap so far. Junior McCall in the lead. Sean Bucks slots in behind. Jason Murphy also in third place. Noor Hendricks, the man in the Ferrari. I knew Noor would have some pace. He's got the inside line. He's going to keep that fourth place. We've got another Ferrari looking down the inside there. That looks like Jason van Rooyen. And so far we're on board with Sean Buck. The grid pretty much staying as it was on the start there. Eye in the sky catching all the action.
He didn't even try and block him.
And he's going to run wide here. There's no ways. Yeah, check. You see, that is the problem there, because you see, I hate that. Like the corner, if you look at that eye in the sky view, the corner allows you to actually run off the line.
Right up behind that. They collide again. And pandemonium here, the Ferrari down the inside. What's going to happen now as they go around the tight hairpin right-hander?
Yeah, can I tell you, I mean, this little section of the circuit is not Noor Hendricks' favourite, because that's where Richard van Carlo got the move done on him as well, to drive as well. I think, geez, I love that. See them racing. That's a big shot.
And as we were saying earlier on, Jason van Rooyen under a little bit of pressure there.
What is going on here?
It's usually everyone's watching each other too much. Like I said,
so.
Like some corners flow straight into the other corner. So if you mess that first corner up, you're now obviously correcting that mistake, and it's pushing you off into the next mistake.
Yeah, it's that rhythm. That's what we saw happen to Noor, where he made one mistake on the one corner, and you end up getting sacrificed big time down the line. But this is a good battle that's going on here, because Nico hasn't given up that position, but Leon giving lots of space.
Actually practicing is overtaking at the end of the straight, because that's the one spot on any decent lap. Three!
My word.
Why they go through that section there? That was a risky move, eh?
That is into turn 10. That must have been a hell of a drag race down that back straight for them to get involved. But listen, he's got the move done here. But this is where it gets tricky. Make one mistake in the sequence of corners, and you're in trouble, because it is an Audi after all. So they're running very similar underpinnings. So you'd think the guys would go for the Audi, but here's Nico Ritz under big pressure coming onto that back straight. So that's definitely Raymond Duggan's going to get the pass done here for sure. And just behind, have a look at the Aston. Watch it close here. Amazing.
Oh my goodness!
Double draft. It's cool.
Absolutely stalking these guys going to the right hand. We know Leon can be aggressive through here if he needs to be. They go very wide. The Audi down the inside. Porsche side by side with the Audi. Porsche's going to run a little bit wide there. Doesn't touch the invalidation markers on the side there, but is Leon Leroux going to be able to grab that inside line? No, he doesn't. The Audi covers.
It's quite cool, because it's a very late apexing right-hander after that turn 10 going into turn 11. So it's like a double apex, literally, Taz. So you can afford to run it, let the car run wide.
Yeah, I think you might be right a little bit there. Not that I'm actually really agreeing with you.
Adrianza smacks it into the wall there, just as we're talking about the corner. Bentley just missing out on some of the action there.
That's a second Audi that's in that exact same thing.
The tussle's on the way to 12th place.
That's racing.
He's still got 29 minutes to go. But guys, I think you do need to also focus a little bit on Junior McCall. I know it's tough when you always get the leader who checks out and no one ever takes notice because the camera never gets back on them. I don't think that Aston is very fast in a straight line, because when you watch him actually behind in the toe, he doesn't catch as much as the other guys can.
No, let's see. This is what you were talking about earlier. The Aston tucks back down the inside. The Audi runs wide. Was there contact there? And off goes Nico Roots. But I think the guys are also running different setups for seeding, for qualifying, for race as well. The Porsches might have a safe setup for the race versus a hot lap setup. Tries to tuck it down the inside, gets in touch with Leroux there. Leon Leroux gets taken out. So far, no positions lost yet. No other cars have caught up as Mumford comes into view there. Yeah, I think, as you said, if the guy's spending enough time behind another car, like here we've got, as you said, a classic example, 3 totally different setups, 3 totally different cars. The Mercedes there of Joubert, Werner Joubert, losing out on that one, grabs a position back there out of frustration now, right up behind that Audi. He just fell back one position. But as you were saying, these cars are all totally different. Each one of them is going to have a different experience and look around the circuit.
I'm just
Something's gone wrong there.
back to the chicane. We didn't realize that they're not racing this.
What are you doing
What is he
there, though?
doing? Oh, covers the line there. Oh, brakes early gets touched. And back into the wall. And what has happened there?
But
That
that's
was very strange. And there.
you see, and that was a great example of running wide. Lawrence let the Porsche run out wide, touch the Bentley, but I've got no issue with that. That was door to door. Yeah. Again, you see, the Bentley is putting its nose in somewhere that it shouldn't be getting. Yeah.
Big contact there.
Strauss in the McLaren getting involved in that one as well. So that's definitely going to be an issue.
On the bright side, we get to argue tomorrow night.
No, I don't going to argue. I think we're all going to have the same.
Oh, Nico Roots under pressure there from Banner-Joubert. And he gives Banner-Joubert a bit of a touch there. Bit of a nudge. Banner runs wide on the outside. Is Nico going to be able to take it back? He does. Will he relinquish the position again as they go through the long right-hander?
Oh, that's naughty, seriously.
I think he should have given that back. And as always, the Mercedes has a look, touches the Lexus, and look at that.
Jonathan, this is exactly a perfect point there. That Merc, that is not the line through there. So down that straight. So I mean, we're looking at our leader now. Well done, Junior. He's going to come across the finish line and get that non-alcoholic champagne. Well done. So this is what we want to see. Let's go back to that break.
Yeah, can we go back to
Junior
Van Collar? I'd like to see Van Collar with Lude Hendricks now on board as they go through turn 10. Last two corners now. What's going to happen as they go into the final right-hander? The Ferrari goes around the outside. Down the inside goes Aston. The Aston might have this one. The Ferrari runs wide. That's going to cost him. The positions stay the same.
The Aston doesn't have the speed. That's the freaking
It
problem.
just doesn't.
Wow.
my zone. Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Please don't let me in. Yeah. Gonna play that. Say you down, I'ma say that. Money make $2. You now just pay that. Fuck that. Ask him now what's Sage at. I've been going to the top and I got what they not, so I know that they hate that.
He had to slip down all the way into turn one, and it's breaking it down.
All these men gonna tell you what I did and they twist and they work till I fall out. But I know that, so I keep what I'm doing cause I own that. And I stay in the lab and I kill everything, but I don't ever move, I'm a cold. So I'm finally back in my home. I'm
Still after
working
the
like so
start
much,
of this
that's why I
safety car.
had me a
Do we have one later on? So it'll be just about
all in, can't beat me up cause I'm back in my zone now.
Having a great start and almost banging wheels.
Cause I'm back in my zone now.
Don't get greedy now, mate. That's good. Settle down.
Welcome to round 5 of the ATK Pro Series, partnered by Kyalami 9 Hour and of course Motorsport South Africa. The game is Assetto Corsa Competizione, and I tell you what, I am so looking forward to this round at Monza, the fastest track on the Formula 1 calendar, and probably one of the fastest tracks on our calendar. This is the circuit that the Tifosi go crazy about. And it's been around since the 20s, for goodness sake. What a circuit this is. And I know that my co-commentator here today is going to be giving me plenty fun facts about this track. Marius Roberts, welcome to round 5. Here we go, my friend.
Listen, we couldn't have planned the timing of this any better because the virtual 24 Hours of Le Mans has just finished as we start the build-up to round 5 of our series. What an amazing flipping weekend for sim racing. And you're right. I mean, you come to a track that's so steeped in history and a race like Le Mans that's so steeped in history, and yet now it's intersecting with modern technology. So it really is it's a cool moment. 1922, I think, track was built, 5.8 Ks. And this is that one circuit where the guys talk about like throttle. It's literally for 80% of the time they are sitting at full throttle. So expect very little downforce, but there are a couple of pesky little corners that you've got to be able to navigate as well. So when we were chatting with Jonathan in our incident report on Monday, we were saying, I think he's going to be busy today because you've got high speed and then suddenly you've got a really silly little chicane that slows you down and people tend to fall over each other. So Jonathan, I hope you've got your Hawkeye outside.
Yeah, we'll be watching that turn 1 very, very closely today. Bit of a reputation that lap 1, turn 1 around this track, but we've had a good talk to the drivers and I think they know what's up.
You're the headmaster, eh? Were you?
Yeah, I think we're going to be looking at some drive-through penalties there today if there's any transgressions. But, you know, all in all, I think the drivers have been very good at being respectful, you know, of other drivers. We have a few mistakes and incidents along the way, but all in all, very impressed so far.
Well, I certainly think the guys are going to have to behave themselves, especially through that first corner. We've got the Pro-Am starting at 3 o'clock and the Pros starting at 5. But today would, of course, not have been possible without our sponsors, AMD, Elgato, and Corsair. These guys bring the best technology in their various silos to sim racing such as this. I mean, we've got our streaming sorted out. We've got our speed sorted out, thanks to AMD. And, of course, everybody's comfortable thanks to those Corsair seats. As we said, racing starts at 3 o'clock. And yesterday was seeding. And seeding went a bit better for some than for others, Marius.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm learning. I mean, the guys from ATK have very generously set me up. I'm a Mac guy. They very generously got me set up with a PC and a steering wheel and pedals and all sorts of stuff. And we're going to get to play this. It's not a game. We're going to get to play the simulation.
Yes.
Because I hear Jonathan talking about balance of performance, and I obviously really want to understand that because that does happen legitimately in the race series where some cars shouldn't work better than others because that's what balance of performance is about, is actually to level the playing field so that all cars are consistent at all circuits. But what we're hearing is in the game, some cars are better suited to some circuits, and it looks like, according to Jonathan, the Merc runs really well here. And we saw that in seeding with the pros. There were a lot more Mercs filtering their way up the top. And if you have a look, we've seen this in Pro-Ams, there's a real mixed bag. I mean, you're obviously raving about the Tifosi in Italy. They're not going to be too happy because there's not too many Italians to cheer about, and the only top one there was Jason van Rooyen in his Ferrari. So hopefully that's going to change when we get to proper qualifying and into the race. But just to go on what Jonathan said as well, the guys do need to remember, I know you put the helmet on and the red mist descends sometimes, but it's a 50-minute race. And as we've seen before, just keep your nose out of trouble for the first couple of laps, get yourself settled into a rhythm, and you're in with a shout here. And I think hopefully the guys will just be aware of that, because I think especially at a track like this, we talk about that concertina effect. And that's what the guys don't realize. They go barreling into a corner and somebody breaks a little bit earlier and you on your edge, and well, it's chaos. So I think the guys just need to be a bit aware of that and get through a couple of laps first.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned the concertina effect. It's something that most people don't take into account. And Jonathan was talking about it early on, about leaving the right space to the driver in front. And then again, the drive-through penalties that he will be handing out, Jonathan, for drivers that don't behave into that first corner.
Yeah, I think, the drivers really need to go into a preservation mode in that first lap. It's all too easy for a driver to see a gap, without even considering that it may be a closing gap or a gap that doesn't truly exist, especially on that first lap, and then go for that gap. Concertina effect, as in, or butterfly effect. Take out driver 1, who takes out driver 2, who takes out driver 3. And next thing, you've got 5 drivers all spinning around, and the next 50 minutes are going to be, utterly ruined for them.
Well, what's really interesting for me as well, just trying to understand. I haven't played the game, but just having a look at what you can tweak and change in setups and how realistic this thing is. Obviously, I mentioned low downforce, but you've still got a couple of critical corners, like you think of Lesmo 1-2, Ascari, the Parabolica. So with low downforce, very easy to light up the tires and to overheat the tires, and you're going to think this might be a tire-safe track because it's predominantly straight. But those corners with low downforce put a lot of heat and work into the tires because you don't have the aerodynamics that's assisting in keeping the car down on the ground. So it becomes a mechanical grip thing, and that's where the tires come into it. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how guys choose to set that up, because you've got to go fast here, but then you've got to be very good in terms of how you manage the throttle.
Well, the Tifosi won't have much to cheer about in this category, our Pro-Am category, but certainly McLaren will. But speaking of Ferrari, you spoke to a Ferrari driver, an actual Ferrari driver this week, Coach Dave.
Listen, that he is. Man, I want to chat to him now. I must actually see the Le Mans race just finished, see how his team finished. But what a moment for him, because he started racing, karting and sim racing, and dedication, hard work got him into racing for real. And obviously the success now of sim racing has seen what he started out as a joke with this whole Coach Dave teaching people how to drive simulator style has turned into big business now. And, guys like Kelvin and Jordan are actually assisting as professionals to train people up. So it's turned into big business. But when we caught up with him, I just wanted to chat about Charles Leclerc. He gets a phone call from Charles. Okay, dude, I'm getting into sim racing.
Charles Leclerc.
How do I say this? He said, it's like, are you kidding? And now this weekend, this virtual Le Mans race has just finished. He was racing at Maranello, so in Ferrari's headquarters as an official Ferrari driver in a virtual race. So, massive respect, because our racing drivers are doing great things in the real world, and David's on that list, but also doing amazing things in the virtual world. So it was great to catch up with David Perel. Let's take a listen. You've set up Coach Dave as an online coaching business for sim racing. That's thinking out the box, literally.
Yeah, it started as a meme a year ago, just over a year ago. I needed to make some extra money while I wasn't at racetracks, because professional racing drivers are paid per day at the track. And I had a YouTube channel which I'd been growing, or working on rather, and it was starting to gain some traction over many years. So a lot of patience there. And essentially, one of the commenters said, hey, you should coach guys in sim racing. And I did it as a meme. I did it as a joke. I said, this will never work. I put up a Coach Dave thing on my website. And the next day, I got a request. And I couldn't believe it. And it was like 1 or 2 a month. And it just eventually grew to this point now where it's myself, Jordan, Kelvin, another guy called Nick Foster, another guy called Dan Wells, who I distribute coaching lessons out to.
So how do you help guys from a setup perspective? Because I know that seems to be the bit that guys struggle with the most, because you can get in that car and have no idea. And that comes from you having real seat time in the real world, because a racing driver maybe less and less these days, but in the old days, the guys used to actually know a thing or two about the mechanics. You know, they weren't just plug and play.
On my YouTube channel, I invite my real engineer, Chris, who's also South African, to be my engineer while I'm racing in ACC. People get to have a preview of what a professional driver, or how we behave in a relationship, and provide feedback for the right things. And a lot of my community gain value from that. The sequence of Barcelona, turn 1, 2, 3, is more important than the individual corners. And if you can understand that, then you can take that lesson to any racetrack you go to. That's the kind of coaching that I put across. And it's the same with setups. The one team that I race for in real life, Kessel Racing, they picked up on this. They heard one of my YouTube videos with Chris, and they contacted me and they said, David, how do we also get involved? And it escalated to the point now when I'm doing an ESRO event, I have not just Chris, I have another 6 people from Kessel analyzing data, if necessary, which for me is quite common, actually protesting an incident. Then we do an hour's debrief after each session. So it depends the environment. Yeah, it becomes very serious. And you must see the reports that my engineers write up. It's unbelievable. I wish I had that work ethic on the documentation side. So in the environment that I'm in, it is very serious, because it's not essentially that we are playing a game, which is true. And to be honest with you, do the results make the world of difference? Well, in my case, yes. And I'll get into why in a moment. But it's also, I have 8 guys who stick around for 10 or 15 hours a week preparing for an event. And if I go and crash the car on the first lap because of a stupid move, as opposed to something which isn't my fault, I've wasted their time, like exponentially. And that's a huge disrespect to my team. When I go back to them in real life, like, why would those guys respect me anymore?
Let's talk Charles Leclerc. I mean, are you sitting and helping Charles with his setup, getting him into sim racing? I mean, like, it's crazy. You wouldn't really have thought that was going to go down.
No, I thought it was a joke when someone said, it was a guy from Ferrari. He said, Dave, Charles watching your stream, can you help him with setup? And I was like, yeah, haha. And 10 minutes later, I was coaching Charles Leclerc. But what followed on from that is that now I'm racing for Ferrari officially in virtual Le Mans, which I know it's just in the virtual world, but it's a dream come true for me. I live and breathe Ferrari since the day I was born. And yes, I race on the customer GT side, but next week I'll be in Ferrari the whole week. And if you look at the driver roster, I'm the only non-factory guy who they brought in the pro lineup, which I didn't actually realize. It was a blur because there was a lot of shootout phases. I had to beat all of the Formula 2 guys in their academy. Then I had to go up against the real sim guys, which is not easy, and try and earn this drive.
Dave, thank you for your time, for joining us. Super, super cool. And I think just, we've got a great bunch of South Africans that are doing fantastic things globally at racetracks. You one of them. We've spoken about Kelvin and Jordan and Sheldon and Tasman. There's so many. But also now in this new frontier of racing, that there's a South African that's at the top of the pile showing the guys the way. It's brilliant. Thanks for your time.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and I appreciate that.
course, Elgato, the leaders in streaming technology. But at the moment, we are back at the track streaming you the race. And these are current point standings with no surprises, Marius. Issa right on the top spot.
Yeah, I think you heard how stoked he was after Paul Ricard in that post-race interview, just saying he just, as a driver, he was just in that sweet zone where he couldn't put a wheel wrong. And I think he bounced back after a third at the previous round at Zandvoort. It's just great to hear someone that stoked to win, and we've been giving him a hard time because it's a Zaire Essa show. But I think that little glitch from round 3 certainly fired him up. But I've been impressed with Bashir as well. Super consistent. Obviously, we missed a big race last weekend with the Audis having some technical issues, and we didn't get to see Jordan get involved there. So he's obviously way down in the standings at this stage. But listen, it's a 12-round series, and the point gaps are very small in the results at the end of the day. So no one has raced away into an unassailable lead at this point. So I think there's still a lot to play for.
Yeah, it's still very much early days there. And as you say, Bashir Jadwat finding his groove. And I spoke to him this week, struggling with the Porsche on this circuit, but really started to find his way now. And he thinks he's in with a shot against Essa. It was great to see Essa look fallible, as you say, but he really did come back with vigor. And I think he's definitely got a fire lit under him to try and win this whole thing. Morgan McCall there in 4th position, our ATK driver, always improving. What do you see for Morgan McCall going forward? Him and his brother now, both focused, both backed by ATK. What are your thoughts on that, Marius?
Well, I think what's going to be cool, and we discovered last week that's why they're not both racing in Pro, because they were sharing a wheel. But obviously, the guys at ATK are sorting that out. His wheels arrived, waiting for his pedals. So I think we've got a break next week before we head to the Nürburgring on the 28th. So I'm expecting then to have both Morgan and Junior racing in Pros. And I think like we've seen that with the Sherritts, having two brothers working together on setup, pushing each other is only going to be good for both of their racing and for our series. But there's one guy that I wanted to just mention. We've looked at Bruno Cuddley. I mentioned we've chatted about him quite a lot. If you remember the first round in Kyalami, I think he was racing in AMS. I think he won amateurs that day.
In the Mercedes, yes.
Yeah, you look at him sitting in 11th place overall. And the last 2 rounds have been massive for him. And I know you were telling me, getting a lot of advice from Raffaello Marcello, who actually races legitimately.
And has won the Le Mans.
And has won the Le Mans now. So it's just amazing to see that help that he's received from a top flight AMG racing driver is paying off, because he's shown really good pace over the last 2 rounds. So we know Merck is going to be strong here. So I think he's going to look for a good outing in the pros and to jump up the leaderboard.
Well, you're certainly right about Mercedes being strong here. The car really does handle the curbs quite well. It's such a pity that we don't see many more Mercedes in the Pro-Am series. We've got Werner Joubert there down in, I think that's 9th position in the first of the Mercedes in the Pro-Am category. But as we said, surprisingly in the Pro-Am, Corne Strauss in the McLaren now in the mix.
Yeah, look, I mean, we don't. That's the thing. We don't know. I mean, just understanding the track. You do take a lot of curb here, especially when you're going through a Scari. So you're looking for a car that's obviously well balanced and well set up there. But it's straight line speed that works, and obviously the game's really helped Merck here. But like the McLaren's a bit of an unknown factor, because I think we've only got 2 McLarens racing in the entire series. So hard to comment on them. But I'm hoping that we'll see a bit of a mix-up. It'd be nice to have cars like that finding their way to the top of the podium. I'm hoping for a Ferrari. Hello, yeah, we're racing at home. Let's turn something on. We're just down the road from Milan. And even the Lamborghinis, we haven't seen too much of them. It very much is Porsche, because I think that's what guys feel the most comfortable with, because they're committing to a car for 12 rounds. So that is the one thing I do love about Pro-Ams, is that there is more of a mixed bag from the manufacturers.
Well, from the top, we got McLaren, Lexus, Bentley, Aston, and Porsche as we now head into the qualifying soon for the Pro Series Round 5 at Monza. For the Pro-Am category, I am literally rubbing my hands together, as we'll be right back after this, and we'll be back with the Pro-Am qualification. Oh, straight into qualifying we go. We've got 18 minutes of qualifying left as we look on at the first Mercedes-Benz going through the parabolica there onto the main street. That's Werner Joubert in that number 11 Mercedes-Benz there. These cars are really good at the circuit, Marius. They climb those curbs like it ain't no thing.
Yeah, Jonathan, you were looking into that crystal ball of yours, but I think it literally comes down to having spent time playing this game, and I think that for me is what I'm looking forward to, is just to play the game a bit and the game, I'm going to stop saying that, to play the simulation and just start understanding a little bit those subtleties that as a commentator sitting here and watching we're not quite aware of. So good for the series though that BOP isn't working the way the real race organizers at SRO have designed it to work, so that it's even Stevens at every single circuit. It definitely looks like there are a couple of cars that are favorites, but we love it because it mixes things up. But Junior McCall as well, we saw round 3 was third last week. Unbelievable drive from the 12-year-old to win at Paul Ricard, and I'm expecting to see more of the same. It looks like that wasn't what his car looked like last week. The guy's bringing in some new artwork here.
Yeah, what they've done is they've actually loaded the artwork onto the server. So now the guys will have custom liveries. Jonathan gave us the scoop early on. This is something new for this round. And we can clearly see now that is the ATK Academy driver, Junior McCall, your previous race winner, coming up behind what looks like one of the other Porsches. And the Porsches here certainly are going to have a problem today. We were talking about the curbs early on, and I've also been quite lucky enough to be handed one of those wheels by ATK. I'm proudly an ATK sponsored driver now, just like you, Marius, and tasting some.
I don't think I haven't driven yet. Let's not push that.
You're not quite the works driver yet, but I've heard good things, and I think you might be up there with the rest of these guys, giving these guys a bit of a run as the Bentley gets sideways there. And I've tested a couple of the cars. Each car, they really do drive differently. They've got different advantages at different tracks. And one thing that one of the top drivers, Bashir Jadwat, another ATK driver, told me is that you cannot go testing a car at one circuit because that same car is going to be different at another one.
Oh, and that's exactly what we were worried about. I mean, that's straight into turn 1. Richard van Coller looks like he got that wrong in the Bentley, and that is sorry. I mean, I've changed your train of thought completely when that action happened, but that is the big risk here. And I think especially when you get in the toe, your closing speed is so massive. It's very easy to miss ever so slightly your brake marker into that first chicane, and it's chaos. And I think what we might see, guys, here, my advice to them, we see it in the real racing. If you realize you've made the mistake, you're going to be on the left-hand side. Generally, just pull straight. And you've obviously got to make your way through the little sausage curbs and back onto the track safely. But when you're going for an overtake move, you're on the inside, and that ends up clattering everyone, as we saw there. So we're going to see a lot of that in the race.
I think we are. I've seen it over and over this week with simulation races, with online lobbies that I've gone into, where you've got the last of the late breakers, the guys trying to get that first corner overtake. It's just not a good idea on the circuit that they're going from flat out from the start line, rolling start, break at about the 120 meter mark at that stage, and then turn into that tight right-hander where there is absolutely no space. And I can see that if the guys further back don't take it easy, they're going to have a problem. As C. Strauss in the McLaren goes into first position. And again, the Ferrari fans in the crowd here in Italy are not going to be happy about that, as Corne Strauss gets a 49.4. 49.4. Yes, he gets put now by Miller with a 49.1.
Wow, so I mean that's quite surprising, because I mean Miller's in the Aston Martin, and Jonathan's mentioned that to us as well, like a very, very nice car to drive, like an easy car to drive. And if you read up a couple of the beginner guides to ACC, they mention it as an easy car to get your head around. Oh, and he's a previous race winner as well. So it looks like I don't know if this was some political agreement that was done, but the Brits are very fast on Italian turf at the moment.
I wonder if this works. I wonder if we can go on board with Werner Joubert. I'd love to get a bird's eye view of what he's seeing now. We can give you guys a little bit of a description of what's happening out in the circuit. This circuit is exceptionally nuanced. There's so many small little details that one has to take into account. For example, the first of the Lesmos here, you've got to hug it in tight, run all the way wide to the left there. Now you'll brake just before the 50 meter mark, cut across here, cut those curbs because the Merc can, all the way wide to the left. down the straight now towards the Ascari curves, and you know this one, Marius. What a section this part of the track is.
But you know the thing, I mean, have a look at the shadows that come through here now as well. That's why I love the realism of the simulation, because that really messes with your vision. Easy to miss a brake marker as well, because you've got the changing shadows. But I mean, through here, it is so important to not be too aggressive on the run into the first one and end up compromising your exit, because the exit is critical here, because you're onto a fairly long back straight and lining you up for me, what is one of the most tricky corners, I think, on any race circuit, the Parabolica. Just your throttle control, knowing when to come on. It's sweet, and you've got to let the car run out wide here as well, because you can.
As you say that, he wasn't running all the way wide there, and that's one of the things that I experienced on this game. That Parabolica entrance, as you say, absolutely critical and so difficult, because one little mistake and you're going to run all the way wide, as we now see Werner Joubert making his way into the first corner, the quick right then left chicane, and absolutely non-negotiable. You cannot touch those sausage curbs on the inside over there.
I love the look of this AMG. I mean, whatever the little colored coding and the design he's got there, that thing looks menacing. So, I love the look of the car, but it seems to be working fairly well here too. But what I love with the circuit too, because it is proper old school in terms of the layout, there's no real runoff. You feel like you are in tunnel vision the whole time, because it's narrow. The Armco barriers are right there. So that always plays on a driver's mind, is that, you know, if I make a mistake here, there's problems. You know, I love the old circuits for that, because for a driver at every single moment when you're out there, that risk versus reward for every move is very, very real. When you know you've got a massive runoff, and if you mess it up, you're going to spin around in the parking lot, that's fine. Ricard getting very, very close again. Hasn't learned from his first incident, and he's actually turning in, for me, far too early into that chicane.
Yeah, definitely.
Contact.
Definitely various approaches to that first chicane. One of them being, as you say, a later turning to line up the second chicane, and this is really one of those courses, as we go on board now with Richard van Coller, where you want to take a slightly late apex going in first, so that you can get the run on the straight. But as he goes past the number 17, they're going to be fighting for position here. This is qualifying, guys, and the number 17 Aston there fighting for position. That is Bleed in front there, also probably on a hot lap, not wanting to yield there, as now Van Coller pulls off and heads back to the pit in frustration. We're now on board with Kieran Patterson, who comes out of nowhere to score 149.0, putting him on the top spot, just 9 1/1000ths of a second ahead of Miller.
That is nothing. And when I see that Porsche on the top, I just hear Zaire saying, no, Monza's really not good for the Porsche.
He says that every time now.
Every time. But you know, what we saw happening there is so important, because I know there was a lot of controversy with our incident report on Monday, when we were talking about, you know, guys leaving themselves space in qualifying, and it's just worth bringing that up again. You know, a track like this, there's lots of time to get yourself into position, ensure that you have enough space. But both guys were on a qualifying run there. Obviously, the game, and this is one thing I don't like with the simulation, is he just hit the eject button and found himself back in the pits.
Yeah.
So in the real world, he would have had to have dropped back, given himself space, and built up that momentum to start his proper hot lap. So that's one thing I'd like to see change, because it really affects how you approach mentally a qualifying session. Now you make one mistake, poof, eject, and you're back again, and that's the one bit that isn't real for me, and I'd like to see that run a bit differently.
As we make our way through now on board with Patterson at Ascari, and as you're saying, Marius, the risk reward, the risk factor in these 15 minutes not as high as it usually would be. These guys hitting the eject button, but only 8 minutes and 50 seconds left now for Patterson to hold onto that top spot there in the Porsche, and surprisingly another Porsche in the lead so far. I was hoping to see that McLaren of Strauss do a little more here, because as I said earlier, the curbs at this track are so unforgiving, and the Porsche is the least unforgiving car here. One of the other major differences are the gearboxes. The gearboxes are, in fact, the gear ratios are, in fact, very, very different on all of the cars. The Porsches, most of the guys are using all 6 gears all the time, whereas some of the other cars, the Mercedes, for example, only using 5 gears on most of the circuit, sometimes dropping down to second gear, or third gear, where the Porsches have to drop down to second. So the Porsche guys are going to be shuffling through a lot of gears in those short ratio gearboxes. Maybe Jonathan can touch on what the differences are with regard to those gearboxes and why.
Gearboxes and why? I mean,
did I put you on the spot, Jana?
I mean,
hand grenade there. Throw it.
You know, between the cars, you know, I'm sure that they have, you know, exactly modeled how the car's characteristics are in real life. So, you know, I suspect that that's exactly how it'll be in the real life cars as well. You know, obviously the Mercedes and the Porsche come from completely different trains of thought from their manufacturers, and they've tackled their race programs completely differently. And SRO, you know, stepping in to add the balance of performance to bring it more in line with you know, competitive series. So it's very interesting to see how the different cars, you know, attack the problems of the circuits differently. And I think you know, balance of performance is playing a lot here, but I don't think we've seen the best of the drivers today yet. I mean, 7 minutes of qualifying left. I don't think we've seen the last from Jabir.
Yeah.
You know, Patterson is a bit out of position in Pro-Am this week, but surprised to see him here. Junior McCall, you know, I think the Porsche drivers, their main complaint is always top speed in all these circuits. So we're going to see, you know, their strengths are going through those S's and the chicanes very well. But I tell you what, when you're racing, there's nothing harder than racing against a fast car. When your opponent is in a fast car, there's nothing more annoying. You can do anything you want. You cannot set yourself up for an overtake where you're strong.
Ask Leslie Oliphant racing against Jason.
Yeah.
You know, where that setup was critical. But John, just correct me here before I go and act like a tool. I do so flippant often, because obviously I'm thinking of this from knowing the cars in the real racing setup. That is what balance of performance was designed to do. And to answer Ernest's question about the gearboxes, obviously you're running cars that are turbo, some are naturally aspirated. So, you know, how the torque delivery works is how they obviously set the gear ratios on those cars as well. So, like the Merc always has been known for having a lot of torque, and that's why you're not going through the gears as much. I'm assuming it runs the same. Yeah, they're not all taking much curb, as Ernest was saying. Very, very easy to unsettle that car. Is that the case here in the game as well?
Oh, definitely. And you know, you mentioned also that a lot of drivers are taking to the built-in game functions of analyzing data with Motec, etc. So what the developers have done is they've pushed very hard to make it ultra realistic, but they have to be careful because they have to protect each of these manufacturers, you know, secret data. So it is so realistic that in Motec, for example, they can't allow the public to see too much information, so they actually have to limit it. Whereas, you know, another sim platform like iRacing would open absolutely every channel for the guys to analyze data. So that's just showing how ultra realistic Kunos have gone here to push physics and tire models and that on these cars. And you know, it's just fantastic that that's been you know, made available to the general sim community, and it's possibly hands down one of the biggest factors in the sim racing explosion that we've seen this year, you know, besides the obvious lockdown.
Yeah, I think guys do want to end up racing what feels as real as possible. So I think that partnership with SRO is critical in terms of that, because then you can have series like this where, like now with lockdown, you're getting the drivers getting into their actual cars and being able to go and represent their sponsors in a virtual series, which is great. Ernest, just having a look. I mean, I watched the record while Jonathan was chatting. So not the right line through the parabolica at all. So there's a lot more space and pace for him to find on that track. But we saw that Audi while Jono was chatting as well, taking too much of the curb going here through Ascari, and that's the one curb you can take, but this curb you can't. There's that there's that sausage there. And if you're going to take it, you've got to line your wheels up over that thing perfectly. And he ended up actually hitting it square in the middle instead of having 2 wheels over and 2 wheels on track. So the game is obviously aware. We know when we watch this real racing, the guys run quite wide on that exit. So the game's going to allow that, like it did at Paul Ricard last week, where it allowed you to run off-track limits in terms of what we would define as a track limit, because that is what the racing actually allows. So the guys just need to know where they can take curb and where they can't, and be very aware of that.
Indeed, as we go on board with Richard van Colle, a car we saw early on taking a lot of curb. And from the cars that I've tested this week, Marius, the Bentley and the Mercedes can pretty much ramp that final curb at the exit there of Ascari, whereas the other cars, as if they give it as much as a sniff, it's a problem, as we saw with the Audi there. So it really is a case of certain cars can and certain cars can't, and which curb can you take and how. And as you so rightly said earlier on, if you line the curb up properly, it's okay. If you don't line it up properly and just mess up the entry to that complex, it's a problem. As we go on board with Patterson, who is absolutely using the entire width of the track. Another factor which plays a key role here at Monza is using the entire width of the track on corner entry to make sure that you get that perfect exit.
But this is brilliant by Kieran, because like we said, I mean, he's been there and thereabouts, but never at the top of the pile. So this is awesome to see him putting in really good qualifying pace. And I think this is a sort of track where you want to get a good start and get into that turn one and let all the chaos happen behind you. I think this is definitely a track where I want to start in pole and hope that I can just get through turn one. So I think it's going to be critical. What's interesting for me, we see Junior with not much time left down in fifth. So it's going to be interesting to see like the fastest guy in Pro-Ams, how he's going to deal with having to battle, because he's been a very good qualifier and he's been able to get the gap and then manage his race pace and run away with things. So I like the fact that we don't see him sitting on pole, because it's going to bring out the racecraft in him. I'm going to be interested to see how the 12-year-old deals with that.
Indeed, at just 12 years old, he certainly has a lot to learn about motorsport, and maybe this is an opportunity for him to learn yet another thing that he can add to his arsenal to give these guys in Pro-Am a bit of a run. And I'm always surprised when you say the 12-year-old, when you refer to him, it just knocks my socks off every time.
But look, I mean, I'm just having a look down in 15th is Sean Buck. I mean, you remember last weekend finished second. So obviously struggling with the setup here and how the Porsche's dealing with the Monza layout. But a nice spread of manufacturers. We've got a Ferrari in the top 6 there, Merc in 7th, Audi in 8th, and then obviously an Aston, a Bentley, and a McLaren, and a Porsche. So this is what I said right in the beginning about the brands. I do love, because we do see a wider representation. So very cool. Qualifying's coming up to end. We're on board now with Sean Buck. So this is probably his one last chance to move up higher than 15th. This is not the track where you want to be fighting the whole race. And I think after a good weekend, last weekend, you'll be a bit disappointed where he's sitting at the moment.
Unbelievable that Sean Buck is now currently 15th. He has to get this lap right. He's got 1 minute 50. We've got a 1 minute 50 wait time. And what that means is he's got 1 minute 50 to complete his lap. Sean Buck, our second place man, making his way around the circuit one last time. I wonder what's going to be the case with him as the clock ticks down. He knows the pressure is on, and he knows that he cannot afford to make any mistakes in that Porsche, as he does, and also not using the entire track with it. I don't think this is going to be the lap for him as we finish qualifying for the Pro-Am division. And ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned, because we'll be right back with the Pro-Am race here at Monza. Well, we just missed it there as Werner Joubert goes to the top spot in the Mercedes-Benz. And is this going to be a Mercedes-Benz dominated week? And certainly might be the case for Pro-Am as Werner steals it on the last lap. And we were talking about it now offline, Marius, is that the game, unfortunately, if the guys cut back to the pit lane, we pop back to the pit lane with them. So the broadcast software built into the simulator doesn't stay on the circuit. So we cut back slightly early there and just missed Werner Joubert getting that top spot ahead of Kieran Patterson. I'm sure he's going to be ecstatic with that, stealing it away at the last second.
Yeah, listen, I mean, our brilliant director, Daniel, you know, he puts us in a car, and if that car decides to abort the lap, we're in the pits.
Yeah.
So it works for good broadcasting, but like there, we obviously missed that last gasp run to the line. And I mean, I hadn't even thought about Werner because he had good pace in the beginning of qualifying, and then he kind of had dropped down to like 5th or 6th, I think 6th or 7th actually.
Yeah.
I was pitching around there, but what a cracker final lap. Talk about dealing with the pressure. So I like that. It also goes according to the form book where we've said that the Merc's going to be quick through here. So this is going to be a cracker race. You also see Junior put in a good lap because he was lying in 5th when we went to the ad break, and he's now found himself in 3rd position. So that'll please him, because not too much chaos ahead. So that's a good turn up for him. So I think, yeah, I just hope the guys just keep it tidy through turn 1. Like we said, it's a 50-minute race. Don't go and throw it all away on the first lap, first corner.
Please don't, guys. Please don't. I'm literally clasping my hands together here out of nervousness as we make our way through the warm-up lap on board with Junior McCall there, our ATK driver, and 3rd place. A great start for him. He's going to be happy with that, and I'm sure big shout outs to the rest of the McCall clan who are watching. I'm sure our nice dad, Senior McCall, I call him, and then of course Morgan McCall, his brother, who will be racing later on, watching on and giving some feedback, I'm sure.
I thought you said the guys could now personalize their livery. Well done to, I think it's Jean van Rooyen, finds himself in 7th, the top place Ferrari. Ferrari fans are going to be going, are you kidding me? It's actually pink and green rims. I thought he might be coming out in full Ferrari racing colors, but one thing's for sure, we're not going to miss it.
We're not going to miss that Jason van Rooyen there in the first of the Ferraris. And yeah, a little bit disappointing, I'm sure, for the hordes of crowds. I mean, this Monza facility can hold up to 100,000 people with 50,000 stands, 50,000 fans in the stands here. They'll be watching on in, I'm not going to, in disgust, I think would be fair. That car should have been red, in my opinion, as you so rightly pointed out. But at least there's a Ferrari in the top 10, and he being the first of the Ferraris here.
Maybe he's racing out of Dubai, because I mean, whenever I go to Dubai, I see a lot of interesting kind of gold-colored cars and that type of stuff. But that is what is so awesome about this, is that this is your game. You decide how your car is going to look and how you're going to look. So I think it's probably quite clever, because we are more than likely going to give him lots of airtime, like we've done.
Like we have done in the past, yes.
It also means that if he makes a mistake, we're going to notice it, because he's not going to blend in with a nasty, you know.
I think it's one of the other pro drivers. I think it's Mumford that's also got. One of the other pro drivers also has a pink car and has been giving me flack this week for pointing it out over and over. But I mean, if you want to get seen, what are we supposed to say? You know, what are we supposed to do as the guys line up side by side? They've got to get into formation side by side. They've got the boxes that come up on the front of the screen to point out to them where they're supposed to be. And the Porsche in the right-hand lane, they need to come a little bit forward. He's in 2nd position. That's Kieran Patterson. Werner Joubert lining up on the outside there in 1st place in the Mercedes-Benz. Junior McCall in 3rd position there on the outside as well. And Ricard van Coller in the Bentley making up the top 4 with the McLaren looking on from 5th place. The first of the Astons in 6th position there. And then the Audis, who have historically done well in the series, back down in 8th position. That's Ikat there in 8th position as we make our way now towards the start-finish line. The guys are getting ready. The lights are about to go out. They'll be going as soon as they hit that line. And off they go. The Ferrari in the background, they're chasing down, but the first place man is Kieran Patterson slots into first place. He takes the left-hand lane. The Vantage Bear Mercedes having a look around the outside there. What is going to happen in the first corner? We see some dust in the background as we go on board here, just behind the Mercedes-Benz with the Porsche. No incident so far into the first turn, and the Pro-Am guys going through turn 1. I'm looking back there. The Pro-Am guys going through turn 1 without incident. Unbelievable.
Well, that's what they did last weekend in Paul Ricard, so round of applause, well done to them. But the guy that's going to be kicking himself is Joubert, because he really messed up that start. We've seen that happen before, where he sat too far back and ended up actually rolling. I mean, in real racing, you're never ever going to be allowed to be ahead of the guy that's on pole. We've got a spin in the background there, big incident. But he just got himself too far back in his little box. And that is why the guy in second place, Patterson, was able to get the jump on him. He actually went across the line first, which is...
As Jason Van Rooyen there goes sideways with the track. He rejoins there. Sorry to interrupt you there, Marius, but Jason Van Rooyen, the man we were just speaking about, gets sideways, goes wide there in the Lesmos, and gets overtaken by the Audi now as they make their way up to a Scotty side by side. This is not a good position for either of them, going into one of the most difficult corners in motorsport. Side by side, Jason Van Rooyen on the inside. Who's going to back out? Is the Audi going to yield as they go through the first of the left-hander? Jason yields, the Audi goes through, and he manages to hold off the charging Porsche of Lawrence just behind him.
You know, it's really tough because for me, Jason should have probably slotted in behind the Audi earlier because he's compromised on the exit now as well. So it's going to put him under a bit more pressure. We see Junior McCall losing a place there, running wide through the Parabolica. And Rickard is now up to third in that Bentley. So that's looking really, really good. But yeah, for people that might have been watching this for the first time and not familiar with sim racing, just that start, they're going, but how can the guy in second be ahead of the guy in first over the line? It's because the game allows ghost boxes, so you've got to position your car within that. And I think for people qualifying for the first time, they end up sitting too far back in the box. As we see the McLaren outbraking itself, and doing the right thing though. So not making contact, giving back that position that it actually took because it missed the chicane. That's sensible driving. So he won't get any penalties from that through the game. That you're going to see a lot of in this race.
I was about to say no harm, no foul, but certainly harm and foul for him. That is Strauss, who was in top position early on in qualifying, now getting overtaken again by Miller in the Aston Martin. That mistake, they cost him 2 positions, but no accident, no incident, no damage, and he gets to go on and to finish first. Oh, as we look back at the replay, big accident there coming through the Lesmos, all the cars further back making contact with each other, one after the next. This is a massive accident. We didn't get any news of this earlier. The Honda also in the mix there. 2 cars parked on the side of the road, and Strauss also making some contact with the wall there. This is going to cause problems for many of the guys.
Yeah, Strauss I think has got some damage there. Looks like he got it wrong out of the second mode and went straight into the wall. But I'd love to see the replay because that was absolute carnage way at the back. So I'm sure a lot of cars will be pulling into the pits. I'm expecting Corne Strauss to do the same thing. It looked like big contact. So he's really having a lap that he'd like to forget at this stage.
Oh, so unfortunate. It's always unfortunate to see someone do so well in the seeding and qualifying rounds and then slowly but surely get pushed back down the order. But this is not a qualifying race. This is a circuit race, and a circuit race comprises of multiple laps that need to be strung together in succession. And Strauss is learning that the hard way. He runs a little bit wide. He gets a little bit of a check there as we go on board now with Van Coller in third position, tussling with Joubert as they go into the first corner over here. Van Coller's got the inside line. Joubert holding him off. Joubert cuts across. That's a bit of a dangerous move there by Joubert, but he closes the door on Van Coller. And Van Coller sensibly holds back and lets him go through.
Well, we saw a little incident during qualifying with Richard just outbraking himself there, and he's obviously learned from that. So that was good because he's putting Joubert under massive pressure, and that is what this type of circuit is, because you've got the long straights, you've got draft that's going to come into it, so the guys are certainly going to be slipstreaming, and then you've got heavy braking, so lots of opportunity to overtake. That pressure is very, very real.
Very, very real indeed. And what's also real is our eye in the sky. I just love this camera angle as we now make our way towards the first Lesmos. We're on board with Jason Gray in the Audi, the second of the Audis, down in 9th position, followed closely now by Lawrence and Mumford right behind him. Oh, and the Audi goes a little bit wide. It gets a little bit of oversteer, and Lawrence now getting a look down the second Lesmo takes the position.
That's not a place you normally see an overtake move happening. So definitely a little mistake. We've got a spin in the background as well. Looks like another Bentley, I think it is.
No. And I see one of the Porsches also in the wall there. Absolute pandemonium. Lots and lots of action here. But it does seem to me that, and I've spoken to the guys this week about the circuit. Some of the guys were going into the circuit saying, you know what, I can put in a fast lap, but it's so difficult to string together 10 fast laps. The circuit really does punish so hard. And I thought that some of our circuits that we've been to earlier on in the season, such as Paul Ricard and Zandvoort, were tracks that would punish. But Monza, people love it for a reason, man. People love the circuit. Drivers love it for a reason because it's the kind of circuit that really does punish mistakes. You've got high-speed straights over here, and as we go on board with Van Colla on the fastest part of the circuit, 6th gear now, he's going to bang down the gears. And these cars, Marius, actually get slowed down quite a lot by engine braking, and they use the gearboxes quite a lot. And I've been told that the gearbox actually in real life takes massive strain on this circuit.
Well, thank goodness, because that's how things work in the real world. I mean, your biggest brake is the engine brake. So, I mean, it's like, it's good that realism is brought through. But you're right, on a circuit like this, because you are coming from massive speeds, probably close to 300, and down to these super tight, literally bus stops, it's going to be loads of wear and tear on the mechanicals. But I think just to go back to what you're talking about, I mean, people would look at this and think, what a great track to learn on, because look at the carnage from the previous incidents. People look and say, oh, what a great track to learn on. And yes, it is. But because of those straights, we mentioned it earlier, you've got to be running low downforce. But then these corners are really tricky. They're actually fairly high-speed corners, so you've got massive instability. And that is what makes it difficult to put lap after lap together here, because the car doesn't want to stop and turn. It wants to go flipping straight and fast. But you've got to get to those, you've got to manage these little tricky corners. So it's a very, very difficult track, actually. Even the people might look at it on the map and think, oh, this is easy. It ain't.
No, most certainly isn't. And it's been made more difficult. As Walker runs wide there into Ascari. And it's been made more difficult by the fact that someone's taken out the brake marker at the second Lismo over there. And that's a problem. It's the 50-meter board, and that's what the guys use to brake there. And as someone that's obviously not as proficient on this game as some of these guys, I struggled when somebody took that board out. So I'm hoping these guys have other brake markers that they can use.
Well, we've spoken about this before, when we chat to the drivers about what do they look for on a track walk, and that's what they always do. Every single race, the drivers will go on a track walk, they'll cycle it, they'll walk it together as a team, and they sit and talk about, can we take this curb here, or should we avoid this curb because of the rumble strip, or whatever it might be. But it's also to find places like that, like those brake markers. And I think it is a little bit more difficult in the simulation. Not everyone has 3 monitors with 180-degree peripheral vision, so it's difficult for you to pick that spot. So that is going to cause some serious problems. They're going to be braking by feel at this stage.
Yeah, it's exceptionally difficult, Marius. As you say, there's not much downforce. The speeds are high. And that was something that I got a little bit frustrated, I'm not going to lie, as we go now with Strauss. And you'll see as he goes through the first Lesmo over here, this one, there they are. No brake markers, all gone. And then into the second Les, you don't really use the first set of brake markers, but these here are absolutely critical. And they're gone now. So I'm wondering to see if we're going to see more incidents of guys running slightly wide there. The lines into those 2 corners, and I suppose the lines on all of these corners are absolutely critical, because if you get them wrong, there's a penalty to be paid, and that penalty only happens at corner exit.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I'm quite surprised to see Strauss circulating, because I had a feeling he might put into pits. We saw him make massive contact with the wall after losing it coming out of Lesmo 2. But maybe he hit it side on the car, still running. He's circulating. The time seemed to be okay, and in 7th place. So he didn't lose too much, maybe 2 or 3 places in that 2-corner bad lap that he had. Jason Gray, we're on board with him now in the Audi. I think he'll be a bit disappointed, because we know he's running the pros. Last week he was in pro, so obviously not going to be too happy being in pro-ams. But the Audis just don't look to be like they were going to be a strong package here. I think they prefer circuits where there's a bit of direction change. I'm surprised that they are where they are. I mean, our top Audi is Eckhart, who's sitting in 6th place. So, look, it's still a long way to go, but it doesn't seem like the Audis have outbraking himself again. Now, this is what I said you will see a lot of. So you've got to go through these little makeshift chicanes. So he's gone straight through the one. Now what's critical is where does he feed back in? Because actually, if you go through there quick enough, you'll come out ahead. Now the game is going to assess, has he actually made time over the guy that he was ahead of?
Yeah, and he'll get a notification on his pit microphone or pit headset saying no penalty given, no advantage gained. But we do have built-in penalties into the game. If the guys do it too many times, they are most certainly going to get drive-through penalties. Jason Gray not doing too well in the Audi. And I think the problem with the Audi is as he runs wide, and that's what I was talking about earlier on. That section there, you want to let the car run wide, but let the car sort of use the width of the track versus trying to cope as the car tries to run too wide. Another Audi now also taking a slightly wider line there through their first Lesmo. And the Audi seems to do well on tracks with curbs, but these curbs here. There you go. Jason Murphy in the wall.
It's obviously gone and lost it coming out of Lesmo 2 on board with him a few minutes earlier. Maybe we'll get a replay of that spin. But Ernest, just what you were saying here, I think that is the challenge that people might not appreciate with the simulation thing, is that you don't feel the mechanical grip. You don't feel what the car's doing in the seats of your pants. So everything that you're looking at is visual. So brain is processing and saying, my steering is here, my speed is this, so the car's potentially going to do that. And that's what you're reacting to. Whereas as a driver on the circuit, you would feel that. And I think that's what makes these corners so difficult, is that you've got to let the car run out wide. But you then got to be very patient in how you bring it back. And I think if you get too aggressive bringing it back, I think that's what the problem might have been with the Audis last week at Paul Ricard through turn 10, is they let it run wide, and instead of just letting it go and then slowly bringing it back, they were trying to force the car back and making it very unstable. And that's why we're seeing cars spinning through Lesmo 1 and 2, because they're patient corners, these. There's another one there. You've got the replay in the background. See, so it's actually contact. So that was... That was exactly it. So you saw him going through, losing it through Lesmo 2, getting a bit wide, coming on the power, trying to bring the car back and losing the back end. They're very, very tricky corners.
That must be so disappointing for many of these guys. So many cars in the pits now. We saw Sean Mumford earlier on, down now in 21st position, a full lap down. He was in the pits getting some repairs. I'm wondering if he's actually going to be coming out. He's still in the pit lane. His race might be run. So frustrating for some of these guys just getting caught up in some of the...
He was definitely involved. Remember that massive pileup? We haven't seen a replay of that. There must have been like 7 or 8 cars involved in that. I'm sure he was definitely one of the early victims in that moment there. So that's a real pity. I mean, as we said earlier, in qualifying, finished second last weekend, and all you want to do as a driver is back a good race weekend up with the next one. So this will be really disappointing for him. A lot of repairs being done. It looks like Jason Gray, after his accidents, also probably pulled into the pits to see if he's got to get that fixed. Oh my word.
Oh my word. More contact there. Jason Van Dooyen touches the Audi. They spin going into Ascari there. And the overtaking opportunity is possible, but it's a risky move, man. We saw there it didn't pay off this time, at least not for the Audi.
Can I be honest? I've never seen an overtake move really working into Ascari. I think the better move is to make sure your exit speed is perfect and you get the drag down the back straight and you have a go either into the Parabolica, which is also tricky, but rather than line up down the straight into turn 1. But to try and get a move that you actually don't have enough time to play with coming out of Lesmo 2 before you get to Ascari to get that move done. And it's such a tricky set of corners. So, my attitude is always stay on the guy's tail, put him under pressure, let him make the mistake, make sure your exit speed is good.
Indeed, as we come up now to one of the backmarkers, one of the Ferrari backmarkers, giving Joubert some trouble there as they go through the second Lesmos now. And Joubert putting some pressure on the Bentley in second position. Van Coller doing well to hold it in second position there.
Yeah, but look at Junior McCall's loving that, because obviously that Merc was slowing up Van Joubert. And have a look at Junior putting a nose out, letting him know that he's there, but doing the right thing, pulling back in. You're not going to get a move done there, but rather just let him know he's there, can make a mistake through these tricky Ascari sweeps so easily. But nice to see Junior's back on the hunt.
Yeah, indeed, Junior back on the hunt, and what a move from him to hold on to the back of this Mercedes. I can tell you from driving the Porsche and the Mercedes, to follow the Mercedes through here must be an absolute nightmare. You're watching this guy bouncing over the curbs like it's nothing, and you can't even go close. Junior McCall has a look down the inside there. He takes a different line. There are 2 lines available there. There is an inside line that you can do that where the distance is shorter. He now lines himself up for the first corner. Junior McCall down the inside here. The ATK driver down the inside of Werner Joubert. Werner Joubert edging away there. Look at the speed of that Mercedes-Benz. He might have got the run there just to get some extra speed. Werner Joubert goes defensive, and Junior McCall falls all the way back. Junior McCall falling back on the straight. Werner having outbraked himself. This is a problem. Junior McCall now on the inside has the run up towards the next S. Junior McCall takes the position, and Werner Joubert slides back to 3rd.
Wow. That's just really interesting because, I mean, you're right. There are 2 different lines through there. And for me, Werner had the right line running it wide, but it seemed like he actually backed out of it, and that gave Junior the shot. But Junior, realizing doesn't have the top speed, pulled back in, and have a look what happened. Werner went and made a mistake, and now he's having a pretty messy couple of corners because it's obviously completely messed with his rhythm. But Junior playing a sensible game there.
I'm glad you said that because now we're seeing Werner Joubert making many, many mistakes. But we're going to cut to a full replay now of that massive crash at the beginning. I cannot wait to see what happened there, Marius. That was absolute pandemonium here as we go on board now. And
I don't know where to look.
There was contact there between the Porsche and that Audi. Across the track, they popped, and with absolutely nowhere to go. So many drivers further back just colliding with them, and they had absolutely nowhere to go. Man, what a pity.
That's an unfortunate thing because, I mean, I know the simulation marshals are on the ball, so that flag would have come up, but it's too late. That car's parked on the racing line, on your exit. You've got absolutely nowhere to go, and by the time you've seen it, literally too late because it's a blind corner as well. You're not going to be able to see around that bend. So, yeah, very unfortunate. I think we lost a couple of cars, and it looks like Sean Buck was probably one of them involved in that. But the guy's already struggling to get a rhythm going around the circuit, and it literally is one of those tracks where I think your rhythm is critical. You get one little chicane wrong and it just compromises your next bit, and that's what we saw happening to a couple of drivers now. So I think it's just about just concentrating, and that's what Patterson's doing up front. I mean, he's opened up nearly a 6-second lead, and we haven't been on board with him very much, but that's great driving.
Yeah, Patterson hasn't really been one of the drivers we've been featuring much in the last couple of races, and now the spotlight on him shining brightly as he makes his way through the Lesbos now and placing the car with pinpoint precision to make sure that he stays in the lead and keep that 5.6 second gap.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, his race was done on that start. I mean, he got a great start, got the pass done before going into turn 1. And now he doesn't have to worry about all the mayhem behind him. Like we spoke about, this for me is a track where you want to get out front, set your own pace. Like now, he doesn't have to worry about anybody slipstreaming him or putting him under pressure, under braking, because he's gone and broken that gap. Now it's just about concentrating and not doing any silly mistakes.
Well, he had a bit of a moment there coming out of Ascari, and that is a problem. That inside curve on the left-hand side, he touched the inside curve on the left-hand side there. The car got a little bit sideways, and he managed to catch it. And I can tell you from having lost it there many times, that was a hairy moment from the inside of that Porsche. On board now with Kleb in the Aston Martin, and he's chasing down Jay Murphy in the Audi. Etienne Kleb there in the Aston Martin. Car looks the part, black and blue. Hopefully he's not going to be black and blue from any contact.
A couple of cars that are black and blue, they might come to the race like that, but they're certainly leaving the race like that. So, yeah.
As we say that, he makes contact. The commentator's curse gets hold of Etienne Kleb. The Etienne Kleb flies back to the pit lane to get repairs. He's going to get a penalty. Raymond Duggan. And Raymond Duggan has...
Ernest?
I think it is allowed. What happens is I suppose Jonathan's the best person to ask that question. Jonathan, to teleport back to the pits like that, it is allowed, but it certainly does. It's going to incur penalty.
Yes, so it's. I mean, we wouldn't call it a penalty. What we'll call it is an amount of time allocated to getting your car towed to the pit. So, so what happens is you will go to the pit, but you will get your controls will be locked for, I think it's a minute and a half, as they repair your car and tow it back to the pits.
Oh my goodness, that seems like a lifetime in one lap. is just about that.
It's again, it's one of those little things. I mean, for people that you haven't grown up in simulator racing, they'd be like, oh, like, what happened there? You know, it'd be nice to actually just see him limp back to the track and play things out like it would in the real world. You know, I hate those quick buttons.
Indeed. They're taking the easy way out there after that incident. And these curves, like we were saying earlier on, the drivers are going into this race. There we go. Another one. Takes the outside curves, gets contact. That is Danny Miller there with Vanderjoubert. And Vanderjoubert, the car that has been said to be able to handle those curves, has made contact and then taking out Miller as well. What a pity. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of this, Marius.
Yeah, I'd love to see a replay of that because, I mean, these are the guys in the front. I mean, these are the guys that have been showing the pace, are super experienced. Something doesn't look too right with that Aston seam getting massive oversteer going in there. So I wonder if he's going to be pulling into the pits. No, he's having another go.
Staying in first place. The walking wounded there. Danny Miller now in fourth place with Vanderjoubert behind him. I'm sure Vanderjoubert's got some damage. As I was saying, a lot of the guys are going into this race knowing that they don't know the track as well as they should and that they are going into certain corners hoping that nothing goes bad on the exit or in the middle of those corners. And unfortunately, I think we're seeing the results of that. Add a little bit of pressure, add a little bit of pace, and you can also add a couple of mistakes to that as well.
Yeah, but it's so funny because, I mean, we're sitting and talking about the guys that know the circuit that well. And I think people, like I said before, look at a map of the circuit and go, yeah, okay, so what do you need to learn about this track? It looks really straightforward compared to a couple of the other tracks we've been to. You said that earlier. But there are some incredible setup things that you need and understanding. You said nuances to this track that make Monza and why the drivers love it. And it's very, very easy to get things wrong here and wrong in a big way. There's a replay of that. Yeah, so the contact wasn't too bad. It looked like it hit Donnie between the wheels, thank goodness, because that contact on a wheel would have broken a steering arm, lower control arm. So it looks like that car's still good to go. But there we go. I mean, that was that Merc running so well, showing such good pace, making one little mistake, taking a curb, and paying a big price. Down in 7th position for Vanderjoubert now.
Yeah, well, you were talking about nuance earlier, and I tell you what, there is so much of it. As we go now into the first place, where you can see here, the guy's got to keep left. There's a little orange marker on the right-hand side there, and then there's another little marker on the right-hand side. Now, those two markers are used as turning points, and the second one is used as a point to start applying accelerator again. You can't see the exit of the corner, but you've got to trust that you've got to get back on the power. Now, if you don't know that, or you haven't figured that out, you're getting on the power and you're not sure when exactly you're supposed to get on the power. It's that kind of nuance that when you drop concentration for a second, you make that mistake, and that's the end of your race. As we now go on board with Richard van Coller, someone that you called in the last couple of races to show some future potential, and he certainly is doing that now in second place, just 3 seconds behind Patterson, with McCall 3.3 seconds further back.
Yeah, listen, I mean, what's obviously helped him now was that mistake by Werner, because that's just given him a massive gap back to Junior, who's now inherited 3rd place as well. So there's no pressure really on Richard. And he's closed that gap to Patterson. Remember that gap, Patterson must have made a mistake, because remember that gap, Patterson had nearly 6-second gap. It's down now to 3. So I don't know if Kieran made a mistake somewhere, but now this is great for Richard, because all you want as a driver is to be able to sight the car ahead of you. And once you do that, it kind of sucks you into that zone, because there's a target. You can see what you're chasing. You can see where he's braking and where he's turning. So I think we're in for a great flipping into this race. I do remember, though, last weekend, Richard ran out of tires, and he did a great job defending his that didn't want to stop and turn. So I just wonder, with 26 minutes to go, if we're not going to find ourselves in a similar position with 8 minutes to go in this race, who's going to have tires left to be able to stop and turn? And that's critical at the circuit, because it's like flat out heavy braking and a couple of key turning points.
Indeed, Richard van Coller there, our previous 3rd place winner from last week's Pro-Am event, now currently in 2nd place. I'm sure he's going to be looking for win. It's great to see a top 3 race taking place here, and the gap's pretty much even, with Van Coller losing out by 0.3 of a second there. The Bentley, as you say, does go quite hard on those tires, but there is a way to look after the tires. And I spoke to Isherwood about his Bentley, and he says there are setups and there are ways to drive the car to look after the tires. But the problem is, if you're trying to catch first place, you are going to run out of tires in the last 15 minutes. It's a problem with the Bentley, and if you're pushing, as I'm sure Van Coller is now, to get hold of Patterson, it might be a problem. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the last 15 minutes of this race unfolds. We're 10 minutes away with 25 minutes of racing left as we now go on board with Craig Eckhout in the first of the Audis, down in 6th place.
Listen, I've been trying to rifle my memory and try and work out, because we said earlier about Kieran Patterson, we haven't spoken much of him, blah, blah, but if I look, he's sitting top 10 at the moment, 10th position overall. So he's been consistent, and if memory serves me correctly, I think he was podium at Zandvoort. I'm trying to remember. I was trying to go back on the Pro Series website now, but it's only showing results for Kyalami and Silverstone. So maybe someone can help me out with that there. But he actually has been consistent. So he might not always be podiums, but he's consistently scoring points, and that's why he's finding himself top 10 overall, which is fantastic. So
unbelievable.
Oh, so this is good news for him, and no surprise then to find him up front. He must have made a mistake. I see he's opened that gap to 4.3 again, so it must have been a little error that he made. But we haven't spoken about Strauss. Cornet is just kind of ticking over, and he's got that McLaren running really, really wide coming out of the exit there.
Well, as long as the car's on the black stuff, or in this case, the grey stuff, he's going to be happy with that. And I think the Audi of Eckhout might be wanting to hunt him down with just, let's see, we've got 1 second between the two of them. And as I loved what you said early on about the fact that once you get a driver in front of you, you can kind of zone in on that driver and pull them towards you. It's a very real thing, that, isn't it? If you're alone out there, you've got nothing else other than your markers. But if you've got somebody in first place and you're in second, you've got this target that you can aim for. And the front runners, all of them have that happening for them at the moment. We've got Van Coller, who can see Patterson, and Junior McCall, who we know has got pace, has got Van Coller in his sights.
Well, let's add some more psychology to the chaos. So the guy who's following obviously has a target. He's in the zone. But the guy who's being chased is now starting to look in the mirrors. And that's the
guilty.
Yeah, that's a subtle relationship that people don't understand until you've actually raced and you've been in the car and you understand it, or in a simulator like this, and you know that happens. You start looking, and then you miss a brake marker, and that gap closes more, and the pressure starts mounting. And that is what makes racing such a great sport, because it's like there is so much mental toughness that's required in something like this. And we talk about guys turning their mirrors in. You know,
I used to do that.
You can't do that, but some of you do. But literally turning the mirrors in, just don't look. But it's hard. It's hard not to.
It's so hard, and it's even worse when the guy behind you is catching you and you know he's catching you. Now, in this game, we get all the data on board, so the driver in front absolutely knows what the distance to him and the driver behind him is. And the words you use there, mental toughness, is certainly what Kieran Patterson, who we're on board now, is showing. His last lap of 50.9, his best lap a 149.1. So he's still got some pace in the bag, and I suspect that he's circulating now, knowing that he's got a little bit of space in reserve, a little bit of pace in reserve, and he's now extended that gap to 3.9 seconds. And Junior McCall still 2 seconds further back. Patterson is looking good as we go into the last 20 minutes of this race.
Well, what's cool, I mean, just having a look, you've got a 15-second gap between third and fourth. So in theory, you're looking at this and kind of going, all right, so the podium battle is kind of done. It's going to be these three guys. But we've made this mistake a few times now, because there's always chaos with like 5 or 6 minutes to go. But that's a healthy gap for those top three guys. And chatting with Zaire and Bashir, they're talking about just being able to manage the tires. And I think that's what's critical in the simulation for the Porsches, is when they get ahead, they can then control the pace, and they can make sure that when it comes to the last 5 minutes in the race, they've still got a car they can stop and turn, and they've got a bit of life left in those tires.
Oh, Junior McCall almost getting taken out there by one of the Audis. I think that was the answer there.
Yeah,
it's getting a little bit sideways there. Junior McCall having to take evasive action. You were saying, Marius?
No, but I mean, it's like, as I've gone and said, you know, the guys for the top three, their battle's kind of done. They're managing their tires now. But something like that ends up happening inevitably, and suddenly everything changes. But it's a nice gap that they've got to Donnie Miller in the Aston in fourth. And there's a gap further back to Cornet Strauss and the McLaren. But I think the battle that we're going to be wanting to watch is between 6th and 5th place, because Craig Eckhart in that in the Audi is certainly closing. He's 1.5, and within one second, you're certainly getting the benefit of. Oh, and he's made a mistake. Thank you. Good cut by the direction, but he's gone and clipped that sausage curb coming out and just knocked him offline, and that's going to slow down his momentum. But within 1.5 seconds, you're starting to pick up some slipstream, which is critical.
I don't think Craig's been having a good race at all in the road racing Audi over there. The car's been all over the place, and when he's starting to push, I would imagine it's going to be a nightmare for him. Strauss, on the other hand, in the McLaren, who had a bit of a terrible start, is now up to 5th place. But as you say, being hunted down by Eckhart in the Audi over here that we've got camera on as he goes into the first corner. Let's see how he does. He's really got to keep it together here. He's making a couple of mistakes on some critical parts of the track.
Have a look. I mean, that little error coming onto the back straight there out of Ascari cost him 1.5 seconds. So he's got 3 seconds, but he's definitely running quicker than Cornet in the McLaren. But both of those drivers had their moments, and I think they then found themselves in a good place on the track where there's no battles. They can get into a rhythm. They're starting to put some good lap times in. So I think that's also what we saw there. That is Craig obviously pushing. He can sense that he's quicker than the McLaren, and made one little mistake. And now you've got to regroup and start building up the momentum again. But it looks like Junior is closing the gap to Richard van Coller as well. Just if I have a look at visually, it looks like he's a lot closer than he was on previous laps. So that's exciting for us, because it means we have a bit of a grandstand finish.
It certainly does look that way visually. 2.1 seconds the gap at the moment. I'm looking to see if that's going to change any second now. But Junior McCall, he knows what it's like to win now. I mean, at that age, he's tasted what it's like to win. And with 18 minutes left, that's enough time to try and pull this thing back. If he drops the hammer now and is able to pump out some laps, especially if, like as is expected, the Bentley starts to run out of tires later on, we'll hopefully see, as you say, grandstand finish. 2.4 seconds the gap now. So in fact, the Bentley has pulled away, but patience is what's needed from the 12-year-old now as he goes into the first corner.
You know what's also so cool? I mean, just watching the virtual Le Mans, as a driver, you're starting to look down the road and what's ahead. And we had a great shot there when we were looking at Junior, looking down towards the Parabolica. There's a whole bunch of slow cars up ahead, back markers. Yeah, they are. So these guys are having work through. Now you start to calculate, where am I going to catch this guy? Please, can I catch him on a straight? Please let me to catch him when I've got to go through chicanes where I can only go follow my leader. And that is how you're starting to now calculate as a driver, and that puts massive pressure on you. So that's great. The Lambo getting out the way, letting Richard through. So that's perfect. Junior is going to hope for the same as he comes up on the back of an Aston, who's now doing silly things.
My goodness. The blue flag out there, Kersop in the Lamborghini giving way, but Glidia in the Aston Martin having himself a little bit of a battle here with the number 3 place McCall. McCall's going to be absolutely frustrated as he goes into Ascari now, side by side. This is not ideal for that 2.2. He darts across the track, tries to get a proper line through here. This is not ideal for Junior McCall, but patience being shown here by the young South African. And he makes his way through now to that position and holds on to 3rd place.
It's just something very important for me. I mean, when we got into circuit racing, the critical thing is just stay on your racing line. So don't move around, because if I'm coming up as a faster driver to pass a slower driver, the last thing I want is him moving around. I know what the racing line is, and he needs to stick to that line, and then it's for Junior to get past him. If you want to slow down, show him that he can pass, but don't move. And that's what Glee did there. He just kind of moved to the inside and put his car in the middle of the second Ascari, which is just the wrong thing to do. So for anyone that's watching, or guys that are trying to learn their way in motor racing, and it's critical in GT racing, it's for the faster driver to make the move. That is it. But what you can do is just slow down, but don't change your line, because that's where the chaos comes. And we nearly saw that there. As Junior chasing a great battle, closing the 2nd place man in 3rd, our best driver in Pro-Ams in terms of results, and nearly taken out by something so silly. So, yeah, I'm not happy with what I saw there.
Yeah, I'm sure he isn't either. But one man that is happy is going to be Richard van Collen now, extending that lead there to 3.3 seconds. I can see the smile beaming across his face from here, as I'm sure he's sitting in that Bentley just absolutely loving it at the moment as we go on board with our first place man, Patterson. And in the background there you can see the Bentley.
Yeah, that gap's been the same. It's been sitting around like 3 second mark. So this for me is still interesting. There's a lot that can still happen with 15 minutes to go in the race. I'm sure Jason Murphy is running with different coloring this weekend. I don't remember it being that color.
Well, what happened before was the guys had deliveries, but the server didn't pick it up. This week we've loaded all the deliveries on the server, and I say we, I mean the team, and that team comprises of Jonathan and his guys, and they've loaded up the delivery on the server, so we can see exactly the custom setups that the guys have with their sponsors, as we saw earlier on, the ATK sponsored car there by Junior McCall, proudly flying the ATK banner on his Porsche. And there we go. Beautiful design there. ATK Academy design for Junior McCall. So he's, of course, sponsored by ATK now and getting developed by the ATK team. And certainly showing that he's got the patience now to stay in third position and start to hunt down and collar the gap now down to 2.1 seconds. 2.1 seconds again, the gap. He's gained 1.2 seconds there up to third position. Still in third position. He's gained 1.2 seconds. Can he gain more? Still 15 minutes or so to go.
Yeah, listen, we're gonna. I'm getting used to this now. It's almost like go and make a cup of coffee for the first 30 minutes, and then start getting yourself comfortable. And with 10 minutes to go, like whatever we say, we get proven wrong. Like, he's got this in the bag, and then the next it's all over. But that is what is great racing, because these guys in a 50-minute race are managing tires, are managing the mechanicals, are managing their minds to concentrate for 50 minutes, to hit every single apex and brake marker on a track like this is critical. So that's why you start seeing mistakes with 10 minutes to go.
I tell you what, it's very difficult to run 10, 20, 30 laps on the circuit, man. One mistake, and it's catastrophic. One mistake, a little bit too much curb here, a little bit too much running a little bit wide there. Like there we see, for example, Junior McCall running it right up to that sand over there. That's exactly what you want to do. You want to put that outside wheel up against that sand barrier over there. And if you go a little bit over, it's a problem. Now we see Van Collen now struggling a little bit all of a sudden in that Bentley, unless Junior's dropped the hammer, but the gap now down to 1.5 seconds. Marius, I think we got ourselves the race for second place.
Yeah, we do. This is awesome, and I mean, it's just going to get. He's in that zone now. He's getting sucked onto the back of Richard. And one thing I must admit with Richard, we've seen that he can handle pressure. He made that the broadest Bentley last weekend. I'm sure he's going to try and do
unbelievable.
Same thing. Yeah, he was one of our. Like I think you actually also put him up as one of your drivers of the day last weekend. So hopefully he's not looking in his mirrors yet, and he's just trying to get consistent lap times going. But pretty soon he's going to start making that Bentley double the size. Just also nice to see a couple of names we haven't mentioned sitting in the top 10. I see Kyle Lawrence, Ian McKenzie, Dewald Swanepoel. Yeah, these are guys that we haven't really spoken of in the race. Or speak much of in previous rounds, but coming to Monza and putting in some really, really good laps and good results to score some major points. And like Lawrence and McKenzie both sitting in Porsches, and like everyone keeps saying Porsche isn't great here, but we're sitting with 4 of them in the top 10. So yeah, they look like they're terrible cars around Monza.
Now McKenzie doing well there in 8th position. Just checking out some of the carnage offline, and some of the guys like Clinton Riddle, who crashed earlier on, was on pace today for, I would say, probably a top 10 finish, and getting taken out by that incident we saw early on. I just got a notification now that there are prizes to be won. The guys can stand a chance to win a Monster skateboard and Astra A10 headsets. Entrants must be over 13 years old and based in South Africa, and they can head over to the Pro Series Facebook page if the guys want to enter that, or any of the Pro Series socials. Oh, we've got some incidents happening on the circuit here. The 2 Audis next to each other. One of the Audis seems to have made a mistake there.
You know what, we'll come back to that prize, but I mean, it was awesome mentioning Dewald Swanepoel in the top 10, and we know Murphy well. He's got good pace. Great move, but he just outbraked himself, ran a little bit wide through the chicane, but did the right thing, because he obviously didn't stick to the circuit, and he gave back that position to Dewald. Now that for me is sensible driving, and it's something you see a lot of at Monza. Make a mistake, outbrake yourself, just make sure you don't make any contact and give back the position and live to fight another day. And that's exactly what he's doing. So expect a repeat when we get to turn 1 again, because he's back on the back of him. But yeah, that's a cool competition. When you say monster skateboard, you don't mean like a really big one. You just mean
it is. I mean Monster as in Monster, the energy drink, and I mean Monster as in a cool skateboard. But all the guys have to do is follow the Pro Series. That's it. Just follow the Pro Series, and you stand a chance to win a skateboard and a 6 set of headsets, the A10 headsets.
I'm going to chat to Jason Webb. I mean, he's a monster athlete. He can get us a monster skateboard. Now, listen, the guys from Monster, we love. We've been on some amazing trips with them.
Didn't you used to commentate at one of the big Monster events for Grid, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we do Gymkhana Grid. So we did South Africa. I did Poland last year. So that's Ken Block's big show. Mm-hmm. So we go with Monster and myself and the crew go and commentate with Jared Dander, who's like the Mr. Drift guy in America. So him and I are the commenting team. And this year we're going, well, let's see what happens. This year we're going to LA. So the Gymkhana Grid will be in LA this year. So hopefully we get to travel, because that'll be awesome to go and do that. And cool bunch of guys. Just back to the racing there, we can have a look. I mean, that move was now done way before turn 1. He got it done going through the parabolica he did. So Dierwold's dropped quite significantly back off the pace. But
unfortunately,
But that's a good move by Murphy there. You know, made a mistake and came back and got the position. He's definitely got the pace.
Yeah, Walker getting that position back there in the Lexus. But back to Junior McCall in 3rd position. Now 6 seconds behind Van Coller. Something must have gone wrong with McCall there. He must have made a massive mistake. And Van Coller once again able to breathe a sigh of relief. Junior McCall maybe pushing a little bit too hard in that Porsche. Either way, he's on pace for a top 3 position if he can keep this car on the circuit and not have to get towed back to the pit lane. He's just got to make sure he finishes the race as we go on board once again with Dierwold Swanepoel in the BR46. Audi now down in 12th position.
Yeah, he lost. I mean, since we picked up, we mentioned him. There's a replay for Junior. Whoa, that nearly ended in tears. So luckily he caught that big impact into that wall. That was through Lesmo 1 by the looks of things. I highlight Dierwold Swanepoel in 10th, and now suddenly he's in 12th, because as we went to that action, he got caught up, and now he's got Nico Roots on the back of him as well. So and Kutsia. So there's a lot of racing that's coming for Dierwold's way.
Yeah. So there's some damage on the front of that Audi. Dierwold cuts in and gets taken out there, but that seemed like a bit of an aggressive turn in there from Dierwold. But when it comes to assessing these incidents, I like to leave it to you and Tasman.
No, dude, come on. Jono, let's have a look. Can we look at this one? Because I know what in terms of aggressive turning, but he's ahead of Nico Roots. So for me, just without having a replay, like, Nico shouldn't really be putting his nose up there. I don't know. Nico's been in a couple of incident reports. So he might be in another one, but I'm sure Jono's going to have a look at that.
Jono, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think we got some good content for tomorrow night's show.
Yeah, we've got carnage, but I mean, like, what we like is those controversial decisions, you know, where it comes down to, whereas when there's one little mistake and you clatter into 20 cars, it's less debatable than that. So I think there's going to be a discussion there, because Parabolica does have 2 lines, and usually you start on the inside and then you run out wide. So that was a bit of a different approach that Dierwold was on, and Nico was up his inside. But this is great for Kieran Patterson. Now got a 6-second lead. What a great race. And this is what we've seen in the series, is the guy that gets off to a good start and gets out of all the trouble is able to gap a lead and consolidate that and manage tires. So good going, not looking so smooth through there, making 2 mistakes through Lesmo 1 and 2, but he's got 6 seconds to play with. So refocus, reboot, and get back into the zone.
And we cut to a replay here, and this is the incident into the Parabolica. We're on board now with the lead Audi, and he's running a bit of a tight line there. They just touch.
No, Ritz has taken a curb there as well. He's actually
it looks like the curb
on the inside. Yeah, but I mean, he shouldn't be there.
I don't think there was any intention of him trying to actually make an overtake there.
Yeah.
Oh, so silly. And I think
The tough
We're gonna
thing,
be-
is, you know, sorry, Ernest, it's like you're saying there's no intention to make an overtake move, but you've clattered a car and spun a car out. So, you know, that's the tricky thing always in those situations is like you've got to be so aware of is that a place to make the move through there? Probably not. You know, so rather keep your nose out of it completely. And obviously you saw he tried to avoid, and it's a curb that ended up causing the problems. But you see Rob Walker, he's obviously got to made a mistake because he's dropped a position. Ritz has got past him, so I don't know what's happened there. Remember, Walker was ahead of Ritz.
Indeed, Walker's car looking a little bit worse for wear, and so is the car of Ritz over there. Ritz in front of Walker now, getting a little bit of pressure from the Lexus. In my mind, one of the best looking cars on the circuit, certainly, but just not getting the results in the Pro-Am category, down in 12th position, but chasing down Ritz in 11th now as we go on board with Walker through the first of the Lesmos. Now, they're going to run wide there. The Audi runs a little bit too wide, and now they're going to go into the right-hand. The brake mark is missing. As you can see, he's going to cut across this curb here, and then run wide now for the run down to, again, an epic set of corners, but certainly a set of corners that has and will continue to catch drivers as they go under the bridge now towards Ascot.
Ritz actually did very well there because we know that Audi's quite twitchy, and when you are running it wide, you kind of have a bit of a brown pants moment, and you end up grabbing the wheel, and then you're going to lose the back end. He actually just let the car run and waited for it to get settled before he brought it back onto track. So that was actually well done there.
Yeah, well done for him. As we see the Lexus running the sandbank over there, didn't slow him down too much. He's still putting pressure now on both Audis. Roots on the back of Murphy, Jason Murphy there in the other Audi. And looks like he's got the overtake. Murphy runs to the left, Roots down the inside. The Lexus watching on, hoping for some action in front so they can take advantage of it. A clean overtake there by Nico Roots in the Rogue Racing Audi, which puts him in the top 10. The second Audi definitely has got a problem, slowing down quite a bit, some damage there potentially, as Walker now also takes a position. Walker tries to get another position. The Audi turns in, they touch. A couple of clanking of cars happening there. Nothing serious though. They all make it through unscathed, but that was an interesting couple of corners there for sure.
Something must have happened to Murphy in the Parabolica because he had a good gap, and as we cut to the Parabolica, he had no drive coming out of there. So I don't know if he lost it going into the Parabolica with a big oversteer moment and recovered it, but literally he looked like he was going backwards down the straight. But late braking by Walker in the Lexus. And I've got no problem. He got the car stopped. Yes, there was some contact, but everything was on line. The car was stopped. No one needed to take avoiding action. That's good racing. But I'm sure Murphy must have got something wrong going into Parabolica there because he had a healthy gap over these guys, and Walker's gone and leapfrogged them all. Nicely done.
Yeah, Walker literally placed his car in the way of the turning Audi in such a way that I don't think Jonathan's going to have too much of a problem with. Jonathan, what do you think?
Yeah, no problem with that. I mean, we'll see what the drivers think after the race, but I suspect that's textbook hard overtake.
Yeah, that was late braking. That was
and fantastic from Roots to, you see he started to turn in there, saw there was a car there, and he backed out of that. So
brilliant.
Once again, it's survival to fight another corner, and here he is in this, last turn, and he's made an overtake.
Walker's gone and made the mistake through the parabolic and given
this is absolutely textbook of what we've been talking about. Survive the corner so that you can fight again later.
But now, listen, if I was Ritz, I'd go defensive straight away because you know how good Walker is under braking. It's like
indeed. And Walker now looking on, he's going to be kicking himself after that mistake. Now chasing down the Audi, and Ritz smiling all the way into 10th position. There's something happening in the background there. I'm not sure one of the cars went into the pit lane or if there's an incident. That's not near the pit lane, in fact. So there must have been an incident further back there as we go on board with Ritz now, followed by Walker in the next.
Can I just mention, like, Johanny Rasmus, why? I don't remember seeing another McLaren in the top 10.
Not at all, but he is now.
No, he's in 9th. I'm like, when, how, who, where? Brilliant. McLaren's the top 10. I don't remember that.
Yeah, we haven't been paying much attention to the McLarens, unfortunately. But look at this race here as The Aston gets it a little bit sideways there. That's Renier could see. Another one that's been kind of flying under the radar. But now I think we're starting to see some of the guys get better marks. And some of these guys are now starting to make a name for themselves. They might not have gotten a mention before because they were down in 18th position. But now these guys are starting to tussle in the top 10.
Well, this is a battle for top 10 position, because if you think Kutsia in the Aston is sitting there in 12th, we have a look. I think that's Walker ahead of him who's made a mistake going through Ascari. So
45 seconds left, Marius. 45 seconds left, my friend.
They'll make it. So there'll be another lap. But I'm seeing that Carl Lawrence is in the pits. I don't know if that's what you saw incident in the back. That's going to shift things up big time. So yeah, we've got one more lap of racing, which is unbelievable. I can't believe how quickly the 50 minutes went. And that's obviously why we're seeing all the carnage. They've got no tyres left at this stage.
Yeah, 0 tyres left at this stage. The guys are now tussling for 10th place. And Kutsia surely knows that he's got Walker in front of him in 11th place. This is his last chance. They would have got a notification over the radio whether or not this is the last lap. And he's going to go down the outside. The Lexus goes slightly defensive, but Roots now doing well to get a gap. That Lexus, though, so good under braking there. And yeah, the Lexus does seem to be very, very good.
And that's our leader. That's Patterson, our leader, coming to lap. So I've just picked that up. That's Patterson. That is our leader who's just gone past the battle for 11th position. That's Kutsia going past in 12th place. So this is great because the good battle on circuit also now involves the leader. So what these guys to do is not get in the way of Kieran Patterson. I know it's sad because it puts a battle, it ends a battle early, but you know, this isn't their race now. So well done. That is brilliant. But it lets you know the pace at this track, that our leader is up to 12th in the standings. It's unbelievable. That's where he's lapping. Brilliant.
On board with Kieran Patterson now. The Lexus right out of the way.
Yeah,
that's the right thing to do. That's the right thing to do. Kieran Patterson with Patterson Works Racing. A flawless, well, almost flawless race. We saw a couple of mistakes there. But he stayed in first place, kept a 3.7 second gap to Van Coller. Behind him has Junior McCall a couple of seconds further back. And Patterson, Kieran Patterson, the man of the moment, just 1.5 corners to go, my friend. As we see some carnage in front here. Got a car on the right-hand side. Just stay out of the way. That's one of the
Stay there, dude. I'll just stay there.
Stay out of the way. As Patterson now makes his way to the last parabolic, he's going to be saying to himself, keep it together. It's still possible to lose it on this corner. He now turns the car, points it in the direction of the finish line.
Right line.
I'm sure he is shaking his fist in the air. Patterson is our Pro-Am winner in the Porsche. Kieran Patterson takes first place in the Porsche. Flag to flag for him pretty much. Richard Van Coller in second place. Junior McCall also making his way down the straight in the ATK Academy car there. Your third place man. What a race. Pro-Am hasn't disappointed once again. The top three guys driving a fantastic race and the guys in the back having a fantastic dice. Unbelievable stuff.
No, because Patterson didn't overtake Roots has to do an entire another lap.
Oh my goodness. Roots has to do another lap. Roots has to do another lap. What a pity there. But we've got to head back to our virtual studio for a couple of minutes as we get eyes on Junior McCall here. Has Junior McCall finished the race though?
Yeah, he has.
Yes. Okay. Junior McCall finishes the race at speed. And we'll be right back after this with the results.
Let me into my zone. 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 Please don't let me in. Don't play that. Take you down, I'ma say that. Money me a couple dollars. Telling you now, just pay back. So I pay that. Ask him now, what's sage at? I've been going to the top and I got what they not, so I know that they hate that.
He had to slip down all the way into turn one and it's breaking it down.
And all these men gonna tell you what I did and they twisting their words till I fall out. But I know that, so I keep what I'm doing cause I own that. And I stay in the lab and I kill everything, but I don't ever move from my code. So finally back in my home. I'm
Still after the start of this safety car, we have one later on, so it'll be just about
all in, can't beat me up cause I'm back in my zone now.
Having a great scrap and almost banging wheels.
Cause I'm back in my zone now.
Don't get greedy now, mate. That's good. Settle down.
Wow, what a race. And look at the smile on Patterson's face. I'm sure that is exactly the smile on his face right now.
It was taken now. It's a live photograph, that actually.
Kieran Patterson in first position, taking that top spot there. And someone that's Van Coller also improving his position from the last race. He's going to be exceptionally happy with that. In second position there, our Stig over there with his helmet on. And someone that is no stranger to the podium, Junior McCall, the ATK driver there in third position, just 12 years old, showing once again that he's got what it takes to mix it up with the front runners. Unbelievable.
Yeah, listen, I'm very impressed because we're seeing some real consistency coming through, and that's what's key. I mean, every race you go to, you want to score points, as many as you can, and that's what Richard's been doing really well. Third last week, second this week, Junior winning last week, third this week. If you remember before, he was third in Zandvoort, so this means obviously when we go to Nürburgring in 2 weeks' time, he's going to win again, because that seems to be either winning or he's third. But Kieran Patterson, brilliant race. As we said, sitting overall standings in 10th position, and that's as a Pro-Am driver. So another great race and great points haul for him as well. Brilliant driving. Well done, mate.
Yeah, unbelievable. And that Bentley, the tires this time in second position there, Van Coller in the Bentley, not too many issues for him with regard to tires this time. Quite surprising. He was able to hold off the hard charging McCall there for second position. So maybe the Bentleys have sorted their tire issues out.
I just think that these corners are not long, fast corners where you're heavily loaded on a tire. That's why I think the Porsches will probably find themselves doing a lot better here from a tire wear perspective as well. The corners are pretty much, there it is, turn and off you go. Whereas a lot of the other circuits we went to, there's big load, high speed, and that's always going to chow a tire. So I think you probably find it's not too heavy on the tires here, which is good for the main race.
Indeed. And of course, just like Sebastian Vettel having won his first race here at Monza, Kieran Patterson is your winner of this is his first race win at Monza in the Porsche. And we were talking about the Porsche in this week about how that car might not do well here. Kieran Patterson certainly proving us wrong by winning this race. Van Coller, as we said, the man with the Bentley, hopping into our virtual commentary booth now. He's going to have a chat to us about his race, and I am dying to know from you, Richard Van Coller, how your race went and how those tires held up, because you did really well to improve your position from last week, third place, now in second place. Looks like a winner's not too far off in the future.
Hey guys, yeah, the tires weren't that bad. The previous race I actually had an incident with a backmark and my front area was damaged, but overall I had major issues with brakes.
Okay.
And it seems like I'm getting used to the brakes now. And yeah, the tires feels a little bit better.
Okay.
The speed overall is just not there for the Bentley at the moment.
But you know what? I wouldn't be complaining. I mean, you're showing consistency, and that for us is critical, Richard. So very, very good racing. It's a technical track. Everyone looks at the map layout and think, oh, what an easy track to go to. But, you're running very, very low downforce because you need the top end. But then you've got some pretty tricky corners that you've got to nail the brake markers. You've got to have the perfect line through them. Hard to get consistent lap times in here.
Yeah, you lose a lot of time if you brake a little bit too late or too early.
Sure.
And especially track temps as well. If it's a little bit too hot, you understeer a lot.
Sure. And you were mentioning earlier on about the brakes of these cars. They've got different pad settings on the car. Which pad did you opt for and why? Do you think that could have been the cause of the brake issues, or is it simply something that the Bentley has to deal with?
Well, I think we all go for the go big or go home setup. It's the first pads. I had issues where my ducts was a little bit too close, I think.
Okay. So the ducts that you're speaking about, there's the ducts that allow cooling to the brakes. And on a track like this, you think there'd be a lot of wind coming in, but sometimes these issues, Richard, only show up in the race.
Yes. I mean, you do 5 laps at a time and you go to the pits and you just try again.
Yeah, but also you think Bentley, it's a big car and you're doing close to 300 and then, stopping it probably down to, I'm guessing 80 or 90 for some of the, from probably turn 1. I mean, that's massive work on the brakes. So you've done the right thing going big or go home when you go to Monza. But getting that cooling sorted out is critical too. But that's, I suppose, what helps you. You're not sitting, on someone's tail. So mechanically, there's enough cooling for the cars.
Yeah, but for a Bentley, if you trail someone, I don't know, it's very inconsistent where you trail someone, you start braking, and then you're way hot. I mean, in qualifying, it happened to me once, and then I tried to just adjust the braking zone in turn 1.
Funny, Marius actually picked that up earlier on, saying that you made some minor adjustments, and glad that maybe it's a good thing that you had that incident in qualifying, because we saw that incident and that gave you the time to make that adjustment. And here we go, podium position, 2nd place. Really, man, well done.
Thanks, man.
Kieran Patterson, our 1st place man. I see he's standing by as well by the sound of things. Kieran Patterson in the Porsche. Marius, what are your thoughts on a Porsche winning year, a car that is supposed to be the most dangerous and difficult car to drive on this circuit?
Kieran, you're chatting to Marius, but do you guys as the Porsche gang get together and decide to tell the commentators every week, terrible track, not going to do well, and then you come out there and you make us all look like tools? Well done, mate. That was an unbelievable flag-to-flag race. Brilliant.
Thanks, Marius. Yeah, I appreciate it. We don't normally chat much, but when we do kind of suss out where our weaknesses are, and we just work together and try to get the points where we can.
Now, normally we're always hearing it's about tires, but this type of circuit, I was worried that potentially it could be quite heavy on the tires because you're running low downforce, which then obviously doesn't help the cars through the really tricky little corners that you've got. It looked like it was fine for you today, though, or did you have enough of a lead that you could manage your pace?
Fortunately, I've done a couple of. I've focused a lot of my race pace more than my qualifying pace. So knowing that I could run 49s quite comfortably and seeing what Richard and Junior were running, I was quite comfortable with where I was. It was just about managing the traffic and overtaking through certain areas.
You also, for me, from a start perspective, we've seen this before. Actually, the first round, people don't always figure out when it's their first time leading out, sitting too far in that virtual box. Because I mean, you actually led over the line as a 2nd place guy. You were in the front from the very beginning. Obviously, a bit of experience coming to the fore there. I've
jumped on and done quite a few races, so I try to stretch the limits, and until you make the mistake, you're not going to know exactly where to be. So you've had your issues where you've made the mistake and got in a drive-through penalty or something. So push it to the limit, stay in your box, and when you see green lights, put your foot flat and go, man.
Wow, that's the right attitude there. Just like Sebastian Vettel getting his first win at Monza, you got your first win at Monza in the Porsche, no less, giving you, I'm sure, a lot of confidence going into the next race. How are you feeling about Nürburgring in 2 weeks' time?
I'm actually feeling quite confident for Nürburgring. I think the Porsche handles quite well there. Obviously, our big downfall with the Porsches, from what we've seen, is it lacks power in a straight line, especially top speed. So with Nürburgring, not too much to worry about that main straight, but I think we'll do quite well there. We'll probably be aware of the Audis as well. They're quite good at Nürburgring, but I'm feeling confident.
Sure, unbelievable stuff, man, and congratulations on your first win in the series. We most certainly now know exactly who you are, and we will be keeping an eye out to see how things go in the future. Thanks so much for joining us here in our virtual commentary box, Kieran Patterson, and congratulations on that fantastic performance there.
Thank you very much, Ernest and Marius. Appreciate your commentary and look forward to the rest of the season.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Marius, what are your thoughts on the rest of our guys? We've got Junior McCall in 3rd position, Miller in the Aston Martin 4th, and Strauss. I'm so happy that we finally see a McLaren in the top 5.
We got 2. I mean, okay, top 5. I mean, I got 2 McLarens in the top 10. Yanni Rasmus. I mean, I've been following the racing, and I don't recall seeing that other McLaren there. So that's brilliant and a proper mix-up for results. But cool chatting to Kieran, because like we said, top 10 overall, another good points haul. So that's critical. Donnie Miller, we didn't see much of him, didn't talk much of him, but I mean, 4th is another good result for him. So a nice mix-up. A couple of guys that we thought would have done a lot better. I would have loved to have known what happened to our other Porsche that pulled into the pits just before. Remember, with about 2 or 3 minutes to go.
Lawrence, yeah.
Lawrence, yeah, because Ian McKenzie was running well and Lawrence was there, people we hadn't seen before. And that for me is exciting. Yeah, we've got the usual suspects up at the top showing consistency, but I love having some new names to sit and banter about.
I'm gonna speculate that Lawrence had to add a couple extra laps of fuel.
That's more than like, yep, that sounds Jonathan. I think Jonathan hit the nail on the head. Well, the commentary team, we're going to have some fuel here, maybe some Monster as we take a break, and we'll be right back after this. as we're heading to the Pro.